All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you I say shalom. This is the brother Yeshaya coming at you again through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Back again with another lesson. This one's going to be entitled Beat Your Plowshares into Swords. Okay. And I'm going to read this article real quick. It's going into the war. Really, the state, the global state of pretty much how war is pretty much taking on the forefront of these nations' budget, their focus. Everybody right now is in the mindset of war, right? But let me read this real quick, and we'll get some precepts, and Lord willing, this be edifying. But it says, global military spending hits record high amid warnings of new arms race. Right. So it says global military spending hits record high amid warnings of new arms race. Right. So that's what we're seeing, man. Wars, and rumors of wars. Right. And especially now that we're coming to the end, the end of Esau's hegemony, the end of Esau's reign. You know, Esau ain't gonna go out without a fight, right? These nations, of course, we understand the theater of war, and we understand that, these people, even though they're in agreement with a new world order, there's still disagreements amongst the particulars and the, what I'm saying, um, the little, they're pretty much splitting hairs at this point, right? And they're really trying to figure out who's going to be in charge, who's going to be doing this, who's going to be doing that, right? But the point being is that this war that we're seeing, is ultimately going to be the war to end all wars. And the Most High is leading these people to a path of self destruction, into a battle that they're not going to be able to win, right? But as we're seeing now, they're talking about raising the budget of the military spending, creating new um, nuclear warheads, right? Especially with this war with Iran, is going to bring in a lot of these other countries, these neighboring countries, the allies of Iran and the allies of the United States, right? These EU, NATO nations, Russia, which is allied to Iran, China, right? North Korea, all these other nations, man, they're going to start picking sides, right? South Korea is going to pick a side. Japan is going to pick a side. All these other nations are going to pick a side, right? And that's going to lead to the battle of Armageddon, right? The battle of Armageddon, right? But again, let me read this back. It says global military spending hits record high amid warnings of new arms race. Right, so record high, and that pretty much brings me to Joel. Let me get that real quick. Joel, the third chapter, and we'll start at verse 9. It says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles: Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up." Right, so prepare war. That's at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. War. These nations, they're getting ready for war, right? These nations are really fed up with the way America, is conducting itself, the way, the state of Israel is conducting itself with all this mass killing, genocide, and all the rhetoric that they're spewing out, you know. And again, they're choosing a side. And it's going to get to the point where really um, there's going to be two major sides. And at the end, pursuant to, what is it, Revelation 21, and I believe it's verse 8, it goes into how even United States, or the whores, which is United States of America, even her allies is going to side against her, right? But anyway, let me continue going on because that's a key point because um, we understand that America is going to go out by thermonuclear fire, right? All these nuclear warheads, this whole arms race that they're doing is building up this arsenal, which will eventually be used against America, right? But anyway, reading verse 10, it says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. You see, so they're going to transfer all this wealth, all this, pretty much their country's GDP or whatever, you know what I'm saying? The money that they get essentially is going to be transferred over to the War Department, right? To build in new arms, new weaponry, right? Because that's ultimately again, what's at the forefront of everybody's mind right now is war, right? So as it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Right? So all the money that used to be used for agriculture, that used to be used for uh, infrastructure, whatever people used the money for, or these countries use their money for, will eventually be used for war, for new weapons, new guns, soldier training, right? Warheads, missiles, right? And let me go back to the article because it says, in short, global military spending has hit a record high, reaching nearly 2.9 trillion or $4 trillion in 2025, according to a report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. That's a lot of money, man. $4 trillion or $2.9 trillion, man. You know how you know what you can do with that money? I mean, they could help so much people, but again, the as a matter of fact, let me get this, because ultimately this is all the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, right? Let's get Proverbs 21 and verse 1. It says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will, right? So the Most High controls the narrative. The Most High controls the minds of these elite, right? The mind of Donald Trump, which Donald Trump is just a puppet, man. He takes orders, right? He's just a face, right? But the Most High controls, these top elite. He's the one that's directing them in a certain direction, and the direction that he's leading them towards is war, right? But it says, what was that? I said, okay, so it says researchers say the increase has been driven by another year of wars, uncertainty, and geopolitical upheaval, right? Uncertainty. The scriptures talk about, um, how's it go? How, damn, how's it go? I just had it. I just had it right. I just had it in my mind. Oh yeah, distress. Pretty much, there should be distress among nations. Bear with me. I think it might be in the Apocrypha. Slovakia. I know it says distress of nations. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So it's Luke 21, Slovakia. Luke 21 and 25. It says, and there shall be, hold on. Yeah, and there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, right? So there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of distress, right? When you go back, it says, researchers say the increase has been driven by another year of wars, uncertainty, and geopolitical upheaval, right? Let me look at this word for upheaval real quick. Upheaval, it says a violent, well, let me read this. It says, is a major, sudden, or violent change, disturbance, or disorder, right? Chaos, right? So it says frequently applied to social, political, or personal circumstances, right? It implies intense disruption, confusion, or worry, right? Perplexity, man. It says in geology, it refers to the upward displacement of the Earth's crust. But pretty much the point being is how these multiple wars that's going on is really, causing chaos and uncertainty, as far as how the world is going to be ran, and also, the stance of these different countries, where they're going to stand after this whole war. And also, the population, they're worried about, how the economy is going to be, how things is going to pretty much play out here in these next couple of months, right? And who knows how long this might last, but we understand that the Most High is speeding things up, right? So the end is here, man. We're right here, man. We're at the precipice of the kingdom of heaven being established, man. Right now, we still got a couple prophecies to come to pass, but best believe we're at the end, right? There ain't gonna be no 100 years, no 1,000 years, right? We're here, man. The scriptures say, if the Most High didn't speed up the times, there shall no life be saved. And looking at the mindset, or the um I guess you could say the idea, or even the plans that these elite have, you know, they no way life is going to be able to continue to, progress and grow with the way that this thing is going. Shit, the population, the birth rate is already on a decline, right? So, come on, man. This shit has to be taken out. America has to be taken out here soon, man. Ain't no way this shit's gonna last any much longer. All right. Now let me go back. It says that's pretty much it on that. That was pretty much the point I wanted to get. Let's actually continue. It says what's next. It says the UN and some international relations experts have raised concerns that the spending was fueling a new arms race and placing pressure on national budgets. Right. So all these different economies, are facing a squeeze, especially United States. The United States is spreading itself thin. Especially, I made a video just the other day going into the debt that America has, but mainly the interest that it has to pay. Is like the interest is like $1 trillion, which is almost, actually is more than their military budget, right? Let me read this. It says the world is spending more money on weapons than ever before. For the 11th year in a row, global military spending surged in 2025, according to new data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Governments invested a total of nearly $2.9 trillion on missiles, munitions, aircraft, warships, and other weapons. Right. So again, let your beat your plowshares into swords. Right. Pretty much funnel or direct a lot of the funding that, or a lot of the money that they're getting, a lot of their GDP, direct that to military spending. But it says it was the highest level of military spending ever recorded, raising 41% in the past 10 years. It says everything points to a world that feels less secure and is spending uh, on its military to compensate for the global landscape. So let me see. It says some defense analysts say it is necessary for countries to increase military spending in response to ongoing wars and geopolitical uncertainty, but the United Nations and International Monetary Fund have raised concerns that rather than guaranteeing security, it could fuel an arms race. And that's exactly what it's doing, right? The scriptures say, "Let the weak say, I am strong." Right? Let me get that. I mean, that was in Joel. So it says, let me read verse 10 again. It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So now you're having, small countries, right? Like North Korea, best believe Japan's going to get in the midst, right? China, what used to be small, now it's big, right? Iran, which is considered a small country, but hey, they're taking on the big bully. They're taking on the hammer of the earth, right? Now let's go back. It says, and there was the risk of a guns versus butter trade-off. Guns versus butter trade-off, where growing defense budgets increase public debt and reduce spending on areas such as education and health. Exactly, man. They're diverting a lot of the funding that they would normally use for education, health, right, agriculture, different things, and pretty much shifting it over to the military, right? But it says the world's biggest military spenders. Last year, global spending rose by 2.9% compared to 2024, according to the SIPRI report. It brought the global military burden, which is the military expenditure as a share of gross domestic product (GDP), to 2.5%, its highest level since 2009. Even the range of current crises and military governments' long-term military targets, the researchers said the growth would likely continue through 2026 and beyond. Right, so it's just going to continue, man. Right, this shit ain't going to stop. It's just showing you this is the build up to the end. Right, so it gives you the list of the top budget spenders. United States, of course, being number one, almost at $1 trillion. China third, China second, Russia third, Germany fourth, so on and so forth, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and get some more of these precepts. Let's continue on in Joel. So it says, Joel 3 and verse 11, it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Right? So again, these heathen are assembling themselves, and eventually they're going to come face to face with the angels of the Lord. Right? They're going to fight against Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And that's going to be that ultimate battle. That's why we say this battle is the battle to end all wars, man. Right? Because they're eventually, this world war, right? Or World War III, whatever you want to call it. But this next war is going to be the war to end all wars. That's the reason why we say that, because in the midst of World War III, where they're all battling and, duking it out, Yahushua is going to come, all right? And he's going to finish that shit, right? But it says, verse 12, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, which means, Yahweh's judgment. But it says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. You see, so they're being prepared to be judged. All these heathen, all these people that are about to be rounded up and, drafted to go into this war, is all going to be for their judgment. All right. And it says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come ye down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Right. So the wickedness of this place, of this world, starting with Esau, Edom, is great, man. It has, as the scriptures say, reached up to the skies. It has reached up to the heavens. Right. It's just a continual blasphemy and or continual blasphemy of the Most High, continual, you know, a violation of the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord. A continual, just pretty much just continual debauchery, man, just going on an all-time high in this, out in the open and in the secret, right? With the Epstein files that came out, man, it shows you what these motherfuckers do on the whether it's day-to-day basis, which I believe it is, but they do it on a frequent basis, man. And that's just, here in America. Imagine on a global scale, you know, how much wickedness is going on, man. Right? But it says, Multitudes, multitudes. This is verse 14. It says, multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Right? So, yeah, multitudes, man. And those multitudes, pursuant to, what was it? Second Ezra 13, I think it is. Second Ezra 13 and verse 33. Yeah, 33. But I'm gonna start at 32. It says, "In the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I showed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as a man ascending." Right. Yahweh Shai is gonna appear with his host of angels. But it says, "And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle they have one against another." Right. So these various armies, they're gonna pretty much do an about face, and come, to battle with Yahweh Shai and the angels. Right. They're gonna be battling it out. They're gonna be blowing each other to smithereens. But then they're gonna, you know, they might hear the trumpets of the chariots. They're gonna see the giant fathership. The fleet of angels, and hey, they're all gonna turn around. Ronald Reagan, he made that speech going into how they will put the differences aside, to fight a common enemy. And that common enemy is going to be Yahweh Shai, because what they don't want is the throne of David being erected back up, man. They don't want, Yasha Allah. They don't want that name to be, on the earth again. They don't want Yahweh Shai to reign, because they understand that if that happens, they're going back to the bottom, especially Esau, right? So they're going to do whatever it takes to try to hold on to their piece of the pie. But again, like I said, it's an unwinnable fight for them. You know, the Most High's got them in a trick bag, right? But it says, verse 34, and an innumerable multitude, right? Going into that multitude, shall be gathered together as thou sawest them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting, right? So they're gonna try to fight Yahweh Shai. But like I said, they're gonna try, but they ain't gonna prevail. It's just gonna be, it's gonna be like a grown ass, Mike Tyson fighting against a toddler, man. It's gonna be no contest. Verse 35, it says, "But he shall stand up upon the mount, on top of the mount Zion." Um, it says, "And Zion shall come and shall be showed to all men." So going to the fathership, being prepared and builded, like as thou sawest the hill graven without hands. And this my son shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest. Right. It says, "And they shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor by the law, which is like unto me." So pretty much they're gonna be all destroyed, man. They're gonna be dismantled. The laser beams, the intense heat, from those laser beams that's coming out the chariots, the what scriptures call, the rays or the horns, coming out of his hands. I believe that was in Habakkuk, the third chapter, right? You're also going to have the nuclear missiles, right? That's going to be shot off. And again, nuclear missiles are part of the Lord's army, you know? Like all these weapons are being prepared ultimately for the destruction of this kingdom, right? Um, Let me see. Let's get another one. Let's go to, because again, just going back to the topic, how they're being the plowshares into swords, is just all the fact that this is a time of war, man. Right? There's a season to everything, as it says here in Ecclesiastes 3:1. It says, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal." So now's the time to kill, man. It's killing time. It's killing season, right? It says a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. Right? Now's the time of mourning. Now's the time to break down. Now's the time to weep. Right? Even though people are in a state of mirth, but hey, as the scripture says, it shall say peace and safety, but sudden destruction cometh upon them. Right? Best believe that destruction is just around the corner. Right when you don't think this shit is gonna happen, it's on you. Right? But it says, verse 5, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. You see? A time of hate and a time of war. That's the time that we're in. The love of many waxing cold, right? The wars and rumors of wars, are popping up all over the world, right? So we here, man. We're at the time of the end. All right. These are the signs that we've been looking out for, that we've been told to watch, and we're seeing them. You see? America had its run. Just like any kingdom, they have their time, right? Their sanctioned limit. But now's the time for this place to go down. Now's the time for its end. The scripture says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. Right? So us, us so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, we should be rejoicing, man. We should be happy that this fucking wicked ass place is finally crumbling. It's finally going down, man. Right? Finally, it's gonna be our turn, man. We have next. Right? So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim, Racha HaKodash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, I'm going to say Shalom, Kwam Yasha Allah.